my sister went back for I think it's a third year of university a couple weeks ago. Um, and she has no idea about most of what's going on in the tech world. Like, she's not, completely incompetent with it. But she's not got like a finger on the pulse, paying attention to what's going on. Didn't even know the Mario movie was coming out. Like, so interested in other things, but still has a general understanding of how tech works. And she went back to uni, and in I think every single one of her classes, they specifically mentioned ChatGPT. They specifically mentioned that if you are caught using ChatGPT, you are just going to fail the assignment. Like, it's instant fail. Which is probably for the best. The problem is there are tools right now that are used to detect plagiarism, to detect AI text generation, like Turnitin. Turnitin is one of those tools that's been around for a very long time, and I've fucking had lecturers who are like, if your Turnitin comparison rating is above 15%, then you fail. Turnitin was a bit sort of messy, especially when there are things where it's like there's one or two correct ways to say something, and when we're talking about something that's maybe 1,000, 2,000 words, it's pretty easy to get to that threshold without actually copying things. Like, if it's quotes, if it's excerpts that should be the same, if it's like specific terminology phrased in a certain way, it's pretty easy to get to that number. I would not be surprised if there are people, and I know I've seen posts on Reddit about this, I don't know how true they are, but if there are people that are getting sort of hit up with plagiarism, what do you call it, like, marks against them, I guess, where they're not actually using ChatGPT. I know I had this happen to some of my mates years back with some programming stuff where it was so fucking stupid. This lecturer was an absolute moron, and I don't know how they even still had a job. So, also, they weren't even a programmer. Like, that's the thing. They were running a course involving programming, but they weren't a programmer. They were a designer. So they were in no position to say that someone was cheating here. So what happened back then is they had, I think it was like wasn't an algorithms class? No, because with algorithms, there's like a couple of ways to do it, and everyone will be marked for plagiarism. I think it was my C++ class. It might have been that or another one where we were making a game. The exact thing doesn't matter. Either way, there were a lot of ways to do something, but for some of it, there were, maybe like a handful of sensible ways. Like, you could, write code in any way you want, but the most logical path is only going to send you down, like, a couple of different directions. And, and in this, they used the same variables, but it wasn't crazy variable names where it'd be weird to be called up for it. Like, I think one of the variable names that they got called up on was the use of I in their loop. Like, this is what I mean by this person shouldn't have been running a class involving programming. If you're going to say someone's plagiarizing because they use I in a loop, they're like, why are you using I? Explain why you're using I. Like, I is an incrementer. Like, this is standard fare when you're doing a loop. And that was just one example, but there were some other variables where there were, only like a couple of things that made sense to name that variable, unless you're just going to give it some, like, stupid name. And I think they might have been caught up for using the same style of casing or something. And there was just little things where anybody who was, actually a programmer, they would see this and be like, no, this is obviously not plagiarism. They just came to the same result. But no, they got called up for plagiarism on this. They had to, like, go to the fucking plagiarism board, prove that I don't know what the board's called, the academic integrity board, prove that they didn't plagiarize it. I think one of them ended up still having to, like, redo the assignment or something, or they got a 0 on the assignment. it was really dumb. But like stuff like that can happen without this was years, for the record, years before things like GitHub Copilot existed. This was like a good, three, how long have I been out of uni? 4 or 5 years. It was like a while ago. I have no idea when I graduated uni. I've literally no fucking clue. Yeah, I got no answer. But like a while ago. And that was before the AI generation stuff. So now that we have it, and now these tools are getting sensitive to the AI generation, there are absolutely people who write text that is in that same sort of style and is gonna be framed in a way that is gonna get picked up by tools like ChatGPT, by like Turnitin or whatever other tools are being used that are trying to detect ChatGPT. I do feel bad for any students that do get caught up in this. My suggestion is whatever you're trying to do, whether it's document creation, source code creation, design work's not really there where it needs to really matter right now. But maybe even like an art class, for example, like a digital art class, keep records of the steps between what you're doing. With programming, this is easy. Make use of Git. With document creation, tools like Word, tools like Google Docs, I think LibreOffice does it as well, can maintain, I actually don't know. I know that Word and Google Docs do, can maintain like a history of your changes. And if you get caught up on that, then yeah, it becomes like you can just show them that, and if they're like, no, you're still cheating, then they're fucking morons. But with art creation, just create, I don't know if the art tools do the same thing. I know they'll have history like when it's a current version of the document, but I don't know if any of them will maintain like a history of changes between saves. But if they don't, just maintain a history of files at different steps, and if anyone ever calls you up on it, just show them the steps and you're good to go. As I said, there will be some dumb people who will still try to like mark you as fail, but there's nothing you can really do about that. And if it gets that bad, well, like there's just nothing. If they won't literally see the fact that there are these steps that got here, then they're just, there's nothing that can be done there. Just accept that your class is being run by some of the dumbest people on the planet. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully you don't get caught up with this. Hopefully your writing is like mine and is terrible, so no one thinks it is AI generated, because it's bad, and AI generation is good. What I'm saying is just be shit at class, and no one thinks you're plagiarizing.